scary story. I know this sounds like the ravings of a madman, like another internet story full of creepypasta, but it's not. This lilac-headed guy exists, and it seems he's chosen me as his next victim. I don't know how long I have left, but I have to tell you. Maybe someone will believe me. Maybe someone will manage to escape. My name is Oleg, an ordinary guy. I work remotely as a programmer. A year ago, I decided to fulfill a long-held dream to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. I bought a small house on the outskirts of a small town, almost on the border with a huge national park. The perfect place, I thought. Silence, fresh air, inspiration for work, morning coffee on the veranda overlooking centuries-old pine trees, walks in the forest after work, camping on weekends. My girlfriend Lena lives in the city, but often came to visit me on weekends. She also liked this solitude, although she was always a little afraid of the forest and at night. She said that he seemed too alive, too observant. I laughed, said that it was just the wind and the cries of night birds. How wrong I was. It all started about 3 months ago. It was late evening. I was sitting at the computer, finishing a rush project. The window was slightly open. The night air carried the scent of freshness, and then I heard it. At first, quietly, barely audible. A strange sound, like the static of an old radio, mixed with a howl, not an ambulance, or a police siren. No, it was something else, mechanical, but at the same time organic. The sound was coming from the direction of the forest. I listened. It repeated a little louder, and abruptly stopped. I shrugged. You never know what could be in the forest. Maybe some tourist got lost, and was honking. Or maybe poachers use walkie-talkies. Like that. I closed the window and tried to forget about it, but something inside me whispered, danger. I didn't attach any importance to it. First mistake. A few days later the sound repeated itself, again late in the evening. This time it was clearer. It was a mixture of static discharges, distorted fragments, some programs, scraps of news, music, alarms. But the most eerie thing was that among this chaos, sometimes sounds slipped through, similar to human screams, distorted, stretched out, as if passed through a faulty speaker. I went out onto the veranda, peering into the dark wall of the forest. Nothing, only blackness and silence broken only by the rustling of leaves. The sound stopped as suddenly as it began. Something strange was happening out there, in the forest. These sounds began to appear regularly, once every few days, always at night. Sometimes they were further away, sometimes frighteningly close. I began to sleep poorly. I became uneasy going outside after sunset. Even during the day, walking along familiar paths, I felt an invisible presence, a feeling as if I was being watched from behind the trees. I began to notice strange things, unnaturally broken branches high up, deep tracks in the damp ground that didn't look like anything from an animal or a human. I told Lena on the phone. She laughed, said I was sitting alone too much and stressing myself out, and advised me to buy earplugs. I felt like an idiot, but the fear didn't go away. It settled somewhere deep inside, a cold lump in my stomach. I decided to stop being afraid of shadows. I needed to figure it out. One night, when the sounds started again, I took a powerful flashlight and my phone. I turned on the recorder. I slowly left the house and headed straight into the forest. The sound became louder, clearer. Now I heard something like an air raid siren, but distorted, pulsating. The flashlight picked out tree trunks from the darkness, bushes, but nothing unusual. I walked about 20 meters into the forest, constantly looking around. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was pressing on my ears, and then I saw it. Not far away, a silhouette flashed between the trees, incredibly tall and thin, darker than the most terrible night. It moved unnaturally, jerkily. For a moment, it seemed to me that it did not have a head in the usual sense, but instead something else. Two conical shapes, pointing in different directions. Sirens. I was seized with icy horror. I froze in place, unable to move. The silhouette swayed and slowly turned in my direction. The sound abruptly stopped. Deafening silence fell. I realized that it had noticed me. Not remembering myself with fear, I turned around and rushed to run back to the house, not making out the road. Having run inside, I slammed the door, locked all the locks, pulled the curtains. My heart was pounding. I was shaking all over. Checked the recording on my phone. Nothing. Just my heavy breathing, and the cracking of branches underfoot. No strange sounds. No sirens. As if they had never been there. I went online, searched for a tall creature with sirens for a head, and stumbled upon it. The Sirenhead, a creation of artist Trevor Henderson, a monster from urban legends, a creepypasta. I felt a sense of relief. It was just fiction, an internet horror story. My imagination had run wild, amid stress and loneliness. It had simply given me a ready-made image, but what I saw was all too real. The footprints, the broken branches. The next few days passed in an uneasy calm. No sounds. I almost convinced myself I had imagined it all, but the feeling of unease wouldn't go away. I began to notice objects in the yard being out of place. A lawn chair overturned, a watering can knocked over, little things. But this had never happened before. One night, I woke up with a strange feeling, like someone was watching me. I crept to the window, and carefully pulled back the curtains. Outside the window, at the very edge of the forest, there it was, the Sirenhead. Now I saw it more clearly. A tall, withered body the color of rust and old wood, and ahead, two sirens covered in some kind of crust with speaker grills, facing in different directions. It stood motionless. One of the sirens turned directly at my window. I couldn't see the eyes, but I felt its gaze, the gaze of a predator stalking its prey. I was paralyzed. I couldn't scream or move. We looked at each other, me, a small frightened person, and this monster from nightmares. An eternity passed. Then it raised one of its long arms, and scraped a bony finger along an invisible barrier in the air, imitating the way I scrape glass. Or maybe it was testing the strength of the invisible barrier between worlds. I don't know. Then it also slowly turned and walked into the forest, disappearing into the darkness. The threat had become real. It knew where I lived. It was watching and it was getting closer. Lena came for the weekend. I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, but I tried to hold on. I told her everything I had seen, trying not to seem crazy. She listened attentively and frowning, said she believed me, or rather, believed that I had seen something and had been through a lot of stress. She offered to go with her to the city for a couple of weeks for a change of scenery. I almost agreed. That night we lay in bed, trying to sleep. I couldn't relax, listening to every rustle. Lena was almost asleep, and then there was a sound, loud, sharp, right under the windows. An emergency alert signal, the kind they broadcast on radio and television during hurricanes or other emergencies. Only it was distorted, interrupted by static. We both jumped. Lena grabbed my hand. Her eyes were full of horror. The sound stopped. We froze. Silence. Then a quiet, barely audible whisper from the darkness outside the window. It imitated a voice. My voice. A distorted, mechanical whisper. Repeated it. Lena! Come out! Lena screamed. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed, just in case, and ran to the window. No one. Only darkness and trees. But now Lena knew. Now she believed. It was here, and it was trying to lure her out. In the morning, when the light cleared, we went out into the yard at the very edge of the forest, where the lilac-headed one had stood last night. We found it, a deep, clear light on the soft ground, long, narrow, with some strange furrows, as if from wire or cable, and another, smaller one nearby. There was more than one, or maybe it was the mark of his hand. We didn't know, but it was proof, tangible, frightening proof. Lena took her things, and left that same day, begging me to go with her, but I refused. I don't know why. Stubbornness, a desire to protect my home, or some irrational fear that it would follow me. After Lena left, I was left alone with my fear. It hid. For several days, there was complete silence. Not a sound, not a single silhouette in the forest. I began to doubt again. Maybe it was some complex hallucination, stress, lack of sleep, stories from the internet. I ate poorly, barely slept, constantly listening, flinching at every rustle. I felt exhausted, empty. I sat on the veranda and looked at the forest. It no longer seemed like a friend to me. It was an enemy, a monster's lair. I thought about giving up and leaving, selling the house, returning to the city, forgetting it all like a bad dream, but something held me back. I was sorting through old things in the attic, trying to distract myself, and came across a box from the house's previous owner. The old man who lived here before me died several years ago. The box contained old photographs, letters, some documents, and among them a diary. I began to read. The old man described his life here, in this house. He wrote about the forest, about nature, but the last entries were strange. He wrote about singing poles, about a tall man made of wire. It came to him from the forest every night. He wrote that the sounds drove him crazy, that he saw it at his window. He was afraid. The dates of the entries coincided. He died a couple of weeks after the last disturbing entry. The official cause was a heart attack, but now I knew the truth. He did not die on his own. He received help. The siren-headed one killed him, or drove him to it. These were no longer fairy tales from the internet. This was the testimony of a man who lived here before me. Something switched inside me. The fear did not go away, but rage joined it, and I made up my mind. I will not let this creature do the same to me. I will not run away. I have to fight back, or at least try. I took out my grandfather's old hunting rifle. I tested it. It worked. I bought several powerful floodlights and set them up around the perimeter of the house. I pointed them directly at the forest. I charged all the batteries for my phone and camera. I was ready to face the siren-headed creatures. It happened the following night. The sky was overcast. The darkness was absolute. I sat in the living room with a shotgun on my lap, looking at the dark windows. The silence was tense, ringing, and then it began. First, a soft static crackle, then the wail of a siren. Not loud, but brief, as if testing a reaction. I turned on the floodlights. Bright light flooded the yard and the edge of the forest, turning night into day. The sound stopped. There was a moment of silence, and then a roar came from the forest. Not mechanical, but furious in an animal roar, mixed with the wail of dozens of sirens at once. The ground beneath my feet vibrated slightly. It emerged from the forest, slowly, without hiding, stepping into the circle of light. It was even taller than I remembered. The skin and lyre on its body felt stretched over sharp bones. Wires were tied around its neck and arms. The sirens on its head rotated slowly, scanning the house. It stopped at the edge of the light, as if considering. Then it made a new sound. Lena's voice, distorted. Oleg, help me. I'm here, in the forest. It grabbed me. Oleg. I went cold. I knew it was a lie. Lena was in the city, safe. But the sound was so real, so desperate. It was toying with me, trying to lure me out. I raised the gun, aimed, my hands shaking. It took a step forward. It was terrible. It shouldn't exist.
It spoke again, in Lena's voice.
Oleg, it hurts. Help, get out, I screamed, not recognizing my own voice. The siren-headed thing froze. The siren stopped rotating. There was silence, and then one of the sirens slowly turned toward me and made a new sound. The click of a camera shutter, and then my own voice, recorded a few days ago when I was checking the recorder. Davery recording check. It was recording me. It was studying me. I took another step. The roar of a gunshot shattered the silence. I hit somewhere in its long leg. It jerked, making an eerie sound, like metal scraping on glass. But it didn't fall. It looked at its leg, then at me. There were no eyes in its sirens, but I felt fury. It rushed toward the house, incredibly fast for its size. It was already at the veranda. I saw it close. Rusty speaker grills, tangled wires, dark holes. It raised its long arm to hit the door or window. I jumped back into the room. I knew it was all useless. It's about to burst in. And then a bright flash lit up everything around. And a deafening crack. Lightning. No. The sky was clear. Something exploded. The siren head froze. He slowly turned his sirens toward the source of the flash, somewhere far down the road leading out of town. Then he emitted a low, vibrating hum, like an alarm. He turned and quickly, gliding unnaturally along the ground, went back into the forest, disappearing into the darkness. The floodlights went out. The power went out. I was left alone in the dark house with a gun in my hands, stunned and shaking. I don't know how long I sat like that. Maybe an hour, maybe more. Then I heard the sound of a car. Headlights illuminated the windows. I looked out. A police car. 2 officers got out. They said there was a call about shots fired and possibly an explosion of electrical lines nearby. Apparently that was the flash. The middle head hit the wires. I tried to explain to them about the monster, about the sirens, about it trying to break in. They looked at me with sympathy and disbelief. They inspected the house and the yard, found shell casings, found huge holes in the porch, found damage to the power lines. But of course, they didn't find the monster. They wrote up a report, saying it could have been a bear or a moose, spooked by the gunshots, or simply vandals. They suggested I file a report. I realized it was pointless. No one would believe me. To them, I was just a guy sitting in the wilderness, scared shitless. I didn't argue. I simply gathered the essentials, threw them in the car and drove away. I left the house. I left the forest. I left that whole nightmare behind. I haven't looked back. Now I live in the city, back in a noisy apartment, surrounded by people and concrete. I'm trying to get back to a normal life. I work. I meet with Lena. She supports me, but I see fear in her eyes when I talk about what happened. I'll never go to that house again. I don't go near the forest, but I don't feel safe. Sometimes at night, when the city is quiet, I think I hear the faint, distorted wail of a siren in the distance, or the static of an old radio. I don't know what it was, an alien, an ancient creature, a product of a sick imagination made real. I only know one thing: it exists. Or maybe it's already looking for a new victim. Maybe it's already watching one of you who's listening to this. Be careful when you hear strange sounds at night. Don't blame it on the wind or animals. Listen, it might be a siren, and it might already be coming for you. Sometimes I feel like the shadow by my window at night is too tall and too thin.